this problem like cannot last till tomorrow.
I took it as an attack.
For me, it was actually out of an insecurity.
I felt like if it revealed who I was, then maybe you wouldn't want to be with me anymore. No, we're not going to find common ground. We're just going to brush it under the rug and pretend that it didn't happen.
That drives you crazy. This isn't going anywhere.
That's not healthy.
We need to figure this out. All right, today we are going to be talking about what we wish we knew about conflict before marriage. Now, we've been married going on 5 years now, so we are by no means experts when it comes to marriage.
Not at all.
But there were probably some misconceptions that, not
100%,
probably, definitely, some misconceptions that we had about conflict, arguments before we got married. That I don't think really anybody can be prepared for until you get married.
It doesn't even matter if you go through premarital counseling.
Yeah, it helps.
It's good,
it helps,
but it doesn't totally prepare you.
And that's the thing for all of our single people that are doing everything you can to be prepared for marriage. We honor that. We encourage you to do that. But I'm telling you, nothing really prepares you for marriage.
The only thing that prepares you for marriage is being married.
Yeah. So there's going to be a learning curve no matter what. And we were not exempt from that. And so when it comes to conflict, what is something that you maybe wrongly assumed about conflict in marriage that was kind of a rude awakening, like those first arguments, first year of marriage?
Okay, well, for me, number one is I thought that love, if I just loved you, that was all I needed.
We would never fight.
We would never fight. Not even just love, but attraction too. It's like if I found you attractive, it's like,
dreamy.
Oh, well, if you upset me, I just have to look at your face and then it all melts away. It's like, no, that's not how it works.
It's not?
No, sorry.
You could actually get mad at me?
It's a harsh truth, yeah.
Yeah, like, oh, I won't be able to stay mad at you.
Because you're just so good looking.
Yeah.
That is so not true.
That I'm not good looking?
No, you stinker.
Wow, bombshell. But no, you're saying that somehow you were actually able to get mad at me despite my good looks.
Yes.
Okay. No, I think that's true because when you're dating,
well, it's not even just good looks.
Yeah,
it's
but
also
just how much in love you are with a person.
Not even just in love, but like, oh, well, I love you so much that I could never get mad at you.
Yeah, which is not true.
It's so not true.
Well, because I think that when it comes to the person you love in a marriage covenant, that person has the most potential and ability to make you happy, but also the most potential and ability to get on your nerves and hurt you.
Yep.
Yeah, they have the largest capacity to heal you, and that's the beauty of God's design in marriage, but they also have the largest capacity to be able to hurt you. And so, yeah, I think early on in marriage, that was something for me as well, because when you're dating, it's like you're putting your best foot forward. I would say even people that have been dating for a long time.
Yeah.
There's still an element of a facade that you're putting up. And until you are in marriage, because I think even people that live with each other before marriage, like living in sin, until there's that covenant where it's like, till death do us part, there's certain parts of yourself that you don't show to the other person.
Yeah.
Because that covenant, and I think that's something so beautiful about marriage, is that because those vows say till death do us part, that in God's design gives you the freedom to be real and to show even the darkest, ugliest parts of yourself to the other person. But until you get married, there's no matter what, there's going to be some things that you don't show about yourself.
I mean, what about you? What was something for you?
I think for me, one of my biggest misconceptions about conflict was because I am the solver, as most men are. I want to solve it. I want to fix your problem.
Yes.
And I would take that into arguments where for me, and this is where you and I are very different, and we had to figure that out early, is I want to talk about it until it is 100% resolved. And I will just keep picking at, but what about this? But what about this? Well, but no, tell me what you think. And you take more time to process. Emotionally, mentally, like you want to think through stuff and process like, hey, how am I actually feeling about this? But I'm like, no, we got to deal with this.
Yeah.
And that drives you crazy.
It does drive me crazy. But I will say that I have grown in that area.
Yeah.
But I do think that where you come from has a lot to do with how you respond to conflict.
Yeah.
Not growing up seeing healthy conflict affects how you react to conflict within your marriage.
Yeah.
And so growing up, I was just taught to shut my mouth, not say anything. If I had something to say, don't bother saying it, or else there would be consequences.
Wow. So you think that early on, because I think there is an element, some people just process through conflict differently. But do you think there's an element of, I'm going to shut down because that's how I got through conflict growing up?
Yeah.
And so it was like an avoidance thing.
Yes.
Talk about that. What was that fear in your heart, like early on in marriage, in those first few arguments, where it's like, okay, instead of like pursuing a resolution, I'm just going to kind of shut down and avoid it?
Well, because honestly, I had this root, and I still have some roots of it where I didn't believe that I was enough. And so even just growing up in a household where I did not get to see healthy conflict, and I wasn't able to express my feelings, my true feelings regarding any situation we had, any conflict, any argument, I didn't have a place to express my feelings. And so I grew up thinking that what I had to say didn't matter. And if I did say something, it would reveal who I am. I felt like if it revealed who I was, then maybe you wouldn't want to be with me anymore. And it's because of those deep roots of like, well, maybe I'm just not wanted enough. Maybe I'm not valued enough. Maybe I'm not worthy enough. And so I would shut down.
Yeah.
And instead of actually expressing my true feelings, but it's also because I wouldn't express my true feelings because I didn't know how. I didn't know how to do it in a healthy way. Or I didn't even know how to express what I was actually feeling because I grew up just pushing my feelings down over and over and over again, that if I even wanted to explain it, I couldn't physically do it.
Wow. That's so deep, because you probably, there's part of you, and tell me if I'm wrong, where you even perceived my desire to get to a resolution as like, oh, I'm just going to pounce on you.
Yeah.
Like,
I took it as an attack.
Like, I'm going to win the argument.
So I would just automatically shut down, even though what you were trying to do was actually healthy.
Yeah, I think for the most part.
No, it was healthy because you were trying to get to a solution instead of just brushing it under the rug, which I grew up with that as well. It's like, no, we're not going to find common ground. We're just going to brush it under the rug and pretend that it didn't happen. Yeah. That's not healthy. That is not healthy. What is healthy is talking about it. Now, I wouldn't say pressuring the person.
Yeah, because that's where I think I had to learn the lesson that there is a healthy balance to that. Because what I would find myself doing, for me, it was actually out of an insecurity where I struggled with the feeling of things not being good between us. So I would almost, I feel like, try to artificially rush to a solution because the feeling of us being in conflict made me feel uneasy.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes people, and this can go for the man or woman, depending on what type of conflict you grew up around, you can push and push and push.
Yeah.
But there's some conflicts that they need to go in the crock pot, not the microwave.
Exactly.
And I would try to microwave it. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, we're not, that whole don't go to bed angry.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that's great. But
sometimes you actually do need to sleep on it because emotions are high and you're not thinking clearly, especially if you're the one that likes to process things. Yeah. The last thing you should be doing is talking about it when emotions are high.
Yeah, it's the cliche, when emotions are high, intelligence is low.
Exactly.
And so sometimes you do need to let things ruminate. And so, yeah, I think for me, that was a big thing that I had to process through, is like learning when to fight for a resolution. Because there have also been times where I'm like, no, like this problem like cannot last till tomorrow. Right. Like, we need to figure this out.
Some things are that big.
But then there's other things where it's like, we're tired. Like,
we're arguing about who didn't throw we're arguing about who didn't put the toothpaste cap back on the right way.
Stuff.
Like silly stuff.
But then, and here's, okay, I'm going to help you guys. You single people who want to be married or people who have not learned this yet in marriage, 10 o'clock at night is not the time to start an argument.
No.
It will not be productive.
No.
Like, okay, like let's table it. And that's something that we've, I think, gotten better at. We're still, it's not always easy, but like, hey, let's table this.
Yeah.
And I think our communication with that has gotten better, where it's like, hey, I love you.
Yeah.
This isn't going anywhere. Yeah. So let's just wait.
Yeah. And I will say that even there's just an ounce of self-control that takes is tabling it. But like you have to have self-control in all aspects of conflict. Yeah. It's like you have to have self-control in order to not say what you're thinking, not overreact when you're angry, but then also have self-control to know when to table the conversation until the next day. Because every ounce of you might be wanting to find a solution, but you got to have that self-control. It's like, hey, you know what? There's wisdom in waiting.
Yeah, there's wisdom in waiting. And I think sometimes that can also reveal what it's actually about.
Yeah.
Because when you're in the heat of the moment, talking about like the toothpaste cap, right? Or the dishes, or, oh my gosh, you left your socks on the floor again. Most of the time, if it's a disproportionate intensity level, like usually it's not about the thing that you're actually talking about. But sometimes you need time to process.
Yeah, and sometimes you need time to pray about it.
Literally, and the Holy Spirit reveals it.
The last thing you need to be going is going to your spouse about it. You need to be going to God about it.
Yeah.
So He can reconcile in your brain what needs to be reconciled. And then that's when you go to your spouse, because that's when you get the true revelation.
Yeah, and so many people, and we've been guilty of this, trying to win an argument.
Yeah.
But the reality is, if you bring it to the Holy Spirit, and you make that the norm of your marriage, then we've seen this. We've both had this happen for us, where the Holy Spirit will actually advocate for us and reveal the very thing to the other person that you were trying so hard to get across to them. Like, Caitlin, you don't get it. You don't get it.
Right.
But the Holy Spirit would reveal it to you. Like, Evan, you don't understand where I'm coming from. And we would take some time, pray about it, let it breathe for a little bit, and God would reveal it.
Yeah.
And that's, something for me, because I'm the guy that we're not leaving this room until we figured this out. That I had to really recognize as a form of striving and leaning on my own understanding, where it's like there's some things that the Holy Spirit's just going to have to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good.
Man.
And I will say that there is no amount of screaming, yelling, fussing, any of that stuff that can make the argument happen the way you want it to. Like, there's no amount of that will win you the argument.
Yeah.
Just because you're louder doesn't mean you won the argument. And I'm one to talk because I've dealt with that. Yes, I've raised my voice, and I ain't gonna say that I'm the only one. But
yeah. Well, and here's the thing, and this is for the people where in some marriages there's a yeller and then there's someone who doesn't raise their voice, but you could look at that as like, oh yeah, the person who yells is the one that's in the wrong. But there are also times where it's like usually the person who doesn't yell is the one that has other ways that they don't fight fair.
Yeah.
Where it's like that you could give a cheap shot with a calm voice, and that's no better than a person yelling. And so I think it's recognizing that, there are different ways that you can be unhealthy in an argument and in a conflict.
Yep.
Man.
So this has been a really good talk.
This has been a good talk.
I'm actually a big fan of this.
Yeah. Well, hey, let us know in the comments your biggest takeaway. Let us know how you deal with conflict, some of the pitfalls that you've had. Let us know because we're just figuring out this whole marriage thing together. And so drop a comment, hit the thumbs up, make sure you subscribe so you never miss another video. And check out Caitlin's channel. Caitlin's building a channel.
Wilson NYC.
It's in the description. It's in the title of this video. Go ahead, subscribe, and we'll see you there.